What's up, everybody? Lou from Hypocritic here on the show floor at PAX East 2025. We are here with Chris from Good Story Guild to talk about their very, very first game, Cat Secretary, and we got a doozy here for you. Thanks so much for taking some time.
Of course, are you kidding? I'm so glad you guys came, and thank you for talking to us.
Awesome. So for those who don't know, tell us a little bit about Cat Secretary.
So, Cat Secretary, you are a stray cat looking for a home in the rain, and you happen upon a job opening in a newspaper, and you are desperate for a roof over your head, so you think, why not? Like any cartoon cat in the Looney Tunes world would. Why not find a roof over your head? So you sneak into that company, fill out a job application, somehow find yourself hired, and end up getting tangled up in the politics of an office and trying to help them solve their issues.
It's a lot of fun, and we're going to dig into a lot of those sort of themes in the presentation of it, but the sort of overarching kind of presentation of it is this sort of cozy, narrative-driven adventure game.
Yes.
And in an era where we're seeing a lot of titles based around that sort of theming, even, cats wandering around
100%.
adventuring, it's interesting to see how every game in that sort of space takes its approach to it. So can you talk a little bit about how that sort of core design and presentation was sort of settled on, and how you sort of started crafting the look and feel of the whole thing?
So it's interesting. We've been working on what we're demoing here today in this incarnation for about 7-8 months. Before that, we started our interactive division in full at Good Story Guild about a year ago. At first we were 3 members, and that first demo and game we were building was very much a proof of concept to be like, oh, well, what could we do as a team? And there was this idea of a kind of Papers, Please-like concept of being a secretary, but as a cat, and the absurdity of that. And as we were building that out and testing it, we kind of kept thinking, especially because we were building it in 3D and not 2D, they really just kept feeling like, but I want to be more in this space rather than just stuck at a desk doing an activity. And so we started exploring, okay, well, what other activities could we do as an office cat? The hijinks of what is the animation and what would the look of a cat doing very human-like tasks in an office look like? And then through that kind of iterative process, we started thinking, well, what would this world be if a cat was working here? Why would a cat work here? And it's that bizarre thing that happens in a lot of storytelling, and from my background in performance and improv, and I know now working on a game of, you start trying to figure out, well, how could we logic this world? And as time went on, and from our own experiences, a lot of our founders are screenwriters. I myself have been a performer since I got out of college and been acting for too long now, 12 years. And we've all had experiences. The co-founders were all in LA when we started, with AI and AI creeping into our jobs. I've literally lost a few jobs to an email saying we're hiring a program instead of you because it's cheaper. And what we've been seeing in LA with how writers' rooms are being run and how there is more and more of a push for AI to potentially subsidize and take over jobs, we were like, you know what? We might have an interesting story angle of a world where they don't want humans, but they need something, so maybe that could be a cat. And that was the first idea, and then we kind of ran with it, and here we are.
It's a fun sort of absurdist way into what are otherwise pretty heavy and prescient themes, right? that are very impactful to a lot of people on a very deep level, and then sort of permeating throughout a lot of industries, obviously the games and technology industries included.
Absolutely.
So can you maybe talk a little bit about how you marry all of those elements together, where you take this inspiration from some of these real-life experiences, balancing some of those heavier themes of, the corporatocracy and AI, mixed in with this sort of more laid-back, cozy experience, designing gameplay mechanics around that sort of thing to keep it engaging. How's that all come together for you?
So we decided to split our game into 2 halves to an extent, a day shift and a night shift. And the day shift kind of reflects that original idea of what we talked about with the Papers, Please logic of being a cat as a secretary and what that would be like. And to us, that's just absurd in the best way. So we wanted to play into the humor and the ridiculousness of a cat doing human tasks. So during the day, you have split into 2 chunks. You get to do a couple of activities. That could be making coffee for your coworkers, could be file sorting. There's a vending machine mini game of something getting stuck and you have to tilt a whirl, get it out kind of thing. There's even to make the bathroom more kind to your coworkers. We have a little kitty litter bed that you can do a Zen garden kind of design in. Wonderful. That makes the poop more manageable. And that's the absurd side of it. But to your point about the AI, It is interesting. The art and the writing allows for us to be a little darker than I think you usually get in your cozy trappings, and that's kind of where our night shift comes into play. It ends up being a adventure game in total, but the night is more of a cozy stealth, where you're going around the office as a cat, discovering the issues of your employees at this company and trying to fix what's been going on, and in the process, kind of unplug the company from its current AI takeover and make it again more of a human place. That's a thing that we've been all experiencing in Hollywood and at production companies ourselves. So it's kind of our tongue-in-cheek take on that.
And giving more sort of a lighter touch to a very sort of heavy and very personal
100%.
topic, like we were saying before.
Not trying to be vicious, trying to be a little bit more tongue-in-cheek, but definitely not avoiding the reality of we're talking about people in their jobs and whether or not they're going to be hired or fired going forward, which is very stressful and something I know a lot of us have experienced.
Right, and in sort of finding that balance, right, in trying to convey some of these ideas without being too pointed or mean-spirited about it, and drawing from your own sort of personal experience, what does that sort of stir up from a creative perspective in terms of opportunities to explore it, in terms of finding satire or opportunities for just general witticisms? I think what we've seen so far is very witty and very funny. So how do you sort of...
I'm so happy when you were laughing.
There's a lot to laugh at, it's true. So how does all of that sort of come together from a creative perspective in terms of finding that balance and then again making it work in a broader gameplay?
We've been very lucky that it's been wonderfully collaborative. We had a rough draft of our script about 5 months ago. That's kind of been the architecture we've been building off of. Because this is our first game and a lot of us had never worked on a game before, we kind of pirate game dev'd our way through it, building the plane as it's flying kind of logic. And so some things, the horse was before the cart or vice versa. It kind of was all mixed together. But thankfully, everyone from the team has experienced this kind of sadness that we're discussing. So everyone had ideas. So when we were building it going, okay, these are the main quests. We have at the end of the first act, a goofy dating sim catfishing of one of the bosses, where you're literally a cat catfishing, as a way of kind of shaming this guy into realizing how much of a jerk he is, which is a very fun, goofy little dating game. And then we have a rhythm game as our final game for the second act. And we had all these set pieces, and from there, we were kind of deconstructing, well, what each act is a different department of the company. And I've worked in production, so the first biome, there's the business biome, second is production. And so we have a lot of art and plot lines that are taken from a lot of our lives. So we had this weird kind of synergistic build where everyone was in line with this, we don't like AI, and we'd rather not. I mean, when we were at GDC, some of our artists were having heart attacks when they would go to certain booths about like AI art generation. They'd be like, oh, thank gosh, the cool truck they built, it has 6 windshield wipers. They're not there yet. We've still got a year or two in us. But it really became more of our writers coming in with a rough draft, and then everyone as they would play through, throwing in, we would call them like, what's the dart you can throw? Like, what bullseye can we add into this? Oh, so like one example of when you were doing the questions at the beginning, there was our rough draft for them, and then someone was like, well, for maybe the sneaky or the cunning version of these questions, what is how can we reflect this anxiety, but also, I guess really I'm trying to be, I guess, more eloquent than I need to be, of just, we're very lucky that we have some smart writers who can be tongue-in-cheek and get to the point, but we understand that with cozy as a concept, we had to keep reminding ourselves we don't want to be just dark. One thing I saw talk at GDC 2 years ago that really kind of helped shape this in my head of cozy doesn't mean it can't be mean in the sense of approaching something that's a little bit more heart-wrenching or dark. There are some cozy games that deal with real loss and truly emotional things. Cozy is more about how it's all presented and how rough it is in treating you, the player, at least from my perspective. You could absolutely disagree, and you have every right to if you do. But from that logic point, that's kind of been the fortunate guiding light for the whole company and building this of, if we think we can throw a barb in there, if we think we can do something a little more vicious, let's do it, but we have to keep this constant reminder of, but we're not just trying to be mean-spirited. It's not just about being a jerk. It's about, hopefully, showing people a little bit more of the reality of what the casualties of a lot of this current push with AI and all the rest of it can be, while showing a more humanistic Looney Tunes logic world behind it all. So it's really been taking that rough draft and the rewrites that have come from that, and then literally every dev being like, well, what about this idea? I have this idea of a mini game, let's throw that in. Or for this quest, I was thinking, we could actually add this little subtext of this person lost, is potentially on the chopping block, and they're going to be replaced by an AI. So we have an interview with a vampire. It's a little bit of a Silence of the Lambs type interview with a vampire logic of a bot that might replace someone that's in the interviewing QA stage, and you have the option of either you can reprogram the bot, and it might not fully take over the person's job, but it possibly could, or you can completely sabotage it and see where it goes. So this idea of also giving the player a little agency and not fully allowing for an AI takeover, but potentially you might make an option or take an option that might not always have the most positive outcome, and trying to see what that does with player interaction and how they feel about this kind of moment in time, the zeitgeist of AI in this world.
And it's so interesting, to your point about sort of what cozy really means, definitionally. Having it sort of be this sort of conduit with, accessibility and ease of engagement is certainly, I think, a big pillar of that.
Yes.
Into some of these deeper themes, I thought it was an interesting point where it doesn't have to just be bright and happy all the time. You can dig into some of the more mature and poignant themes and, industry impact and all these things, while still having it wrapped in that more accessible shell.
Absolutely.
And you do kind of strike a balance with that. So I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, that's been our kind of guiding light this whole time. Of our art and our writing is the driving force. It's an adventure game. We want people to be interactive. We want them to laugh, which you thankfully did. But there's one of my favorite quotes of any film. It's from one of my favorite movies, Old Boy, much darker film. But it's laugh and the world laughs with you, cry and you cry alone. And it's a little bit of that thing of you use humor to deal with the darkness. And we're not trying to be too dark. We're not trying to layer it on too thick. We're trying to keep it bright and a little bit more sunshine. But it doesn't mean we can't show a little bit of that darkness at the same time.
There's still a little poignancy in there,
Yeah, exactly.
So it sounds like a very organic development process where all these ideas and the foundation for it has come together very naturally, and sort of, like you said, almost pirate-esque, where you just sort of build the plane as you're flying, right? I imagine a really big component of that from the development perspective is now getting it out into the world and having people experience it. You mentioned this is, I think, the first public showing of the Cat Secretary, with people getting their hands on it who have not experienced it before. You get so close to a product like this when you're developing it. What has it been like to finally get the game out in front of people, and what are some of the reactions you're seeing?
Outside of the internal heart attack every time a bug pops up in our beta demo, and I'm like, I thought we fixed that. I'm joking, but it's wonderful to get people to touch it. I've been the main QA'er with a few friends for the better part of 8 months now, and so it's that weird thing of we all have our own idea of the game. We all have our own, because we've played it so much, things we like or don't like, but we always have to remind ourselves, and this is why it's so refreshing being here with other people, whether or not they end up liking it, is just getting external feedback. And I know that is such a driving force in so many of these conventions for so many devs and all the rest of it, but it really matters more than I ever thought, because I've only been doing game dev for a year, so it's not my expertise. I always knew how much it was important, but I did not realize how good it is for the sanity to get people to touch your game. So for us, just getting it out here, I can tell you I have learned, for better or worse, so much in the last 2 hours seeing people mess with it. What makes you laugh? What doesn't? Is there a gag that lands every time or not? When this moment or a set piece occurs, how is everyone interacting with it? Do we maybe need to shift it? It's so interesting. Unlike film, audio recordings, like we do a lot of podcast work and scripted audio, you have so much more control in every other form of media. Player agency, which I'm sure your audience is very well aware of, that's the beauty of games. That's why horror games versus horror movies are always such an interesting dynamic. But player agency and camera agency is such an interesting and terrifying beast to tackle. Because, again, I might play through the game 30 times to QA it, but because I'm rushing through certain moments, it might be the same approach every time. And then one of the first people to play it today is someone who could not care less about all the tutorials and what it was telling them. They were just sprinting and spamming jump like a madman and going into every corner. and my heart rate was rising, going like, oh, they're gonna find everything. They're gonna find everything, because I haven't done this before, so they're gonna find things, and they did. But it's been hard for me as a performer first. I've hosted a lot of shows, used to do a lot of theater in New York and some in LA, improv and otherwise. And even with a crowd of 150, when you're doing a show, or whether it's on camera or live, you have control of the product, you've rehearsed it. Even if it's chaos with improv, there is a structure and the rules can be broken in a very limited way. With game dev, you can add the weirdest little thing and it breaks everything. Sometimes we add a new tutorial, and it turns out half the game vanishes. That literally happened once, like a week ago. Wow. We added a bunch of animations last week that we had to revert for this demo because we needed it to be playful. And I've always heard stories, No Clip and other channels do incredible documentaries about game dev that really give you a good inside look. But experiencing it firsthand is a different beast. So having people actually engage with it, being able to see, okay, we're not crazy, this idea is working for some, and again, for some it doesn't, totally makes sense. That's why there are so many genres, there's so many options out there. But it's been really reaffirming and, like I said, tongue-in-cheek and terrifying to kind of have that give and take now with people messing with it. Some people are very patient when they play, like you three, which, thank you so much. You basically played it in the most perfectly kind way. And then again, like that first person, just going around like crazy. But interestingly, you can glean just as much info from both styles of play, and that's not something I'm as used to from my experience with performance and media and all the rest of it.
It is certainly very dynamic, and yeah, it's a great point where once it's sort of in this sort of environment, it truly is out of your hands.
Oh, there's so many times where someone's playing it and they hit the bug, and I'm like, let me fix it. Let me try to fix that. And as I'm learning, because it's also my first time at PAX, so there's a little bit of me learning how kind everyone is here, and they are so kind. In my head, I'm like, it's not perfect. They're going to hate us. And thankfully, people are understanding. This is a very early beta kind of thing. Things will break, and they're not, again, the performer in me that's used to, as a host especially, like looking at the audience and noticing who's having a good time or who's not, and what can I do to finally get that person on board. It's a completely different gene. I'm not used to kind of exercising, and muscle I'm not used to exercising with watching people here. And the fact that everyone's been so friendly and understanding, and yes, out of my hands, but they're willing to give feedback and constructive criticism, which is awesome. PAX is a pretty magical place.
We certainly think so.
Yeah.
And spend a lot of time at these kinds of shows, and it is interesting from that perspective of not necessarily naivete, but having that fresh perspective of it, where first time just showing the game, first game from a new studio, all this kind of fresh experience.
Yeah, a lot of first time game devs.
A lot of first time, and I mean you do typically find a very receptive audience at shows like this because players understand a lot of the time how difficult game development often is. They want to see projects like this succeed.
Yeah, this is an educated audience. It's not people walking in and going, "You have game, must be good," right? I would say half of the people that have played the demo today have told me we're in dev ourselves. And so I don't have to do the whole spiel of like, don't hate me, don't hate me, don't hate me. It's beta. They're like, oh, dude, we get it. Like, I'm sure you were trying to figure out the build yesterday because something broke. And I was like, how did you know? Yeah, that did happen. We did all have a heart attack and almost crawl into the fetal position last night at 11 p.m. going, the build will be good. The build will be. And so, yeah, it's... I've always heard the legend of how wonderful PAX is. I've had a lot of friends come here every year, and I know you guys have been coming here for quite some time, and I get it. I used to, for a fan site, I used to go to E3 in the last few years while that was around, and when they first opened it up to fans as well, and I think about the energy of that show versus this, it is so different. In my head, I thought it would have a little bit of that rat race crunch feel to it, and no, it's a magical safe space where I can tell people, I'm sorry we failed you, and they go, thank you, it brought me joy for 2 seconds, even if it broke, and it's so nice. It's so nice.
If that's not a glowing recommendation,
oh my God, come to PAX.
To the show, I don't know.
Seriously.
One more question for you.
Please.
in all of these firsts, in sort of making your way so organically through the game development experience and building this and getting it out into the world, obviously there's probably a lot of trial and error involved. You're understanding a lot of different things as you go, like we said, building the plane as it's mid-flight. But a lot of people are in the same situation where they're trying to build a project like this, or they're embarking on their own game dev journey. Knowing what you do now, even just at this phase of everything, has anything stood out to you, or do you have any sort of recommendations or thoughts for people who may be interested in kind of following their own art?
Absolutely. In kind of two parts, we're very lucky that we aren't beholden to a publisher. We're self-funded currently and have the runway for this game, so I didn't sleep because I came from the West Coast, so last night my brain's kind of shutting off a few times. But so we're in a very lucky spot where we've had an opportunity from some of the other projects that we do, helping fund this, of allowing ourselves to explore and make mistakes. But even before we had that on-ramp of really having a team, there were three of us, like I said before, doing this first thing, but before it was CatSec, they were building in Unreal a multiplayer brawler. And that was as a test for two of those individuals to learn Unreal, because they'd never, again, one was an actual engineer, one was an artist right out of college, and the other person, one of the co-founders, a screenwriter by trade, who's had a background in tech as an IT person and helping on software, had never done game dev. And almost I've always wanted to be in games, like so many of us, myself included, so to answer the long answer and long way around to the answer, just start, because we just kind of started, and we actually, within 2 months, because of how, and I don't mean to be a shill for Epic, they're doing fine, they don't need my help, but Unreal has so many tutorials, and it is so welcoming in that sense of how many videos internally, or you go to YouTube, the amount of times someone on the team has been like, hey Chris, can you do this? Because I do some of the level designing as well as, we're all jack of all trades to an extent. And I'll have a minor freak out of like, I have no idea what that means. And then I can Google it, and literally there will be 12 different tutorials of people being like, oh, this is what you're trying to do with a static mesh and how to like, I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Learning my vocab as we go. It's like, I don't know if you're a big tabletop or board game person. I'm an obsessive fan, and when I try to teach people games, especially board games, I always explain it first and foremost, especially if they're new to the medium of like, playing a game, it's learning vocab. You might actually know everything this game is mechanically trying to teach you, it's just going to do it in its own way, and it's vocabulary. And the vocabulary of game dev in Unreal is actually a lot friendlier than I thought it would be. Now, at the same time, get lost in it all the time and I have no idea what I'm doing, but you really can start from scratch and just make a game. Is it going to be perfect? No. Our brawler demo was real messy overall, but you really can take the plunge, and the community, especially coming here to PAX and having talked to people while we were opening, it's a lot friendlier and welcoming than you'd expect. I'm used to, again, Hollywood and New York theater / acting. And New York, I would say, weirdly has more camaraderie. So much of going through LA is everyone being very nice, and then the second you're out of the room, they're like, I'm gonna make sure that guy gets nothing. It's a lot of the, daggers behind men's smiles kind of logic. And game dev, it's quite the opposite. Everyone seems to know how hard it is, because it's really hard. It's not as simple as x plus y equals z. It's x plus y divided by all the mistakes that happen from that bit of addition, and then how do we fix it to get whatever the variable is. And you can reach out to anyone, and as long as you're not a jerk of a human being, they're willing to help, because everyone knows it's a struggle. And as we see with the state of the industry right now, and as a job market and all the rest of it, doing the indie side of things is, I think, going to keep growing, because people don't seem to want to always be supportive when it comes to the financials of it all. So if you're thinking about going for it, just go for it. It's going to it makes all the difference. Sorry if I've taken way too much of your time.
No. Just start. That's I think the summary there. So all of this is going to come to fruition at some point. What's the release window for Cat Secretary? And
so release window is fall. We're aiming for October. We're definitely going to be on PC, on Steam. We are trying to be on Xbox and PlayStation as well. Switch is its own bit of chaos to get through the door, so we're trying to do everything, most likely in terms of ease of access from how we've reached out and the feedback we've gotten with DevKit logic. definitely Steam and probably Xbox first. But eventually everything. We're trying, I promise. I promise.
It's very clear. They are working on it. Chris from Good Story Guild, thank you so much for the time.
Thank you so much for the time, Steve.
And keep it tuned here for more from PAX East all weekend long. Cat Secretary.
What game is this?
Cat Secretary.
Cat Secretary.
Cat secretary.